Welcome to Lone Crow Adventures, the channel where we talk about everything camping, hiking, and backpacking. If it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button because we've got lots of good content that you're going to like. Today, we're going to talk about first aid on the trail. Hi, I'm Samantha, and this is Lone Crow Adventures. This is the first aid kit that I bring with me on every trip. I picked it up at Walmart for about $10, and I've added some extra items to it to make it most suitable for the outdoor injuries you're going to encounter on the trail. Now, when you're camping or when you're backpacking, the types of injuries that you're most likely to see are things like cuts, burns, lacerations, muscle strains, bug bites, bee stings, and maybe a twisted ankle. So we don't need to bring the giant trauma kit because we're really unlikely to encounter that. You need to know how to use every single thing in this kit. If you don't know how to use it, leave it at home. It's not going to do you any good in an emergency situation. Now I'm going to show you what I carry in my little pack next. Here are the items that I carry with me in my first aid kit. So the first thing that you want to make sure you have is gloves. I actually carry around a few pair of these because you always want to make sure that you're considering universal precautions. You never want to come into contact with anyone else's body fluid. It puts you and that other person at risk. The second thing that you want to think about in an emergency situation involving any kind of a wound is infection control. And two really good ways to do that is through using an irrigation syringe before you apply any kind of antiseptic. Now this is actually an insulin needle. I picked this because it is a very lightweight option, and this one holds 1 milliliter. You always want to use sterile water when you're going to be irrigating a wound. That's another thing. We don't want to introduce bacteria into that wound. But what I've done here is I've actually just removed the needle from this small little syringe, and this makes a great lightweight option for an irrigation syringe. So this is something I've added to the kit. Here we have some antiseptic wipes. You always want to make sure that you have some kind of a wipe where you can kill bacteria. Then in terms of bandages, I always like to carry a few options. The large bandage and the small bandage, and then I also like to carry these little U-shaped finger bandages because when you're camping, a lot of times you'll get cuts on your hands because you're dealing with knives or axes. So these come in really handy. In terms of wound closure, another great option is to have some steri strips if you know how to use them. If you don't know how to use steri strips, save the weight and leave them out. The other thing that I like for wound closure are these little butterfly stitches. Now these can be really helpful if you cut yourself and it's a fairly clean cut, but it's a deep cut, and if it's one of those cuts where you're thinking, I think I might need stitches for that. Once we get the bleeding under control, you can throw one of these or two of these over that cut, and that will help the wound to stay closed and minimize bleeding until you have a chance to get yourself to a hospital or to a clinic. So I always like to carry these. When we're dealing with wounds in the field, one of the things I added to the kit is this. This is just a triple antibiotic ointment. So what I would do with this is I would take the bandage, and after I open it, I would put a little bit on the middle of the bandage just to help prevent the risk of infection. So it's always good to have this antibiotic ointment for infection control. Another thing that I added to the kit was this. This is New Skin. This is a form of a liquid bandage. So if you have small cuts and bruises, especially if it's on the finger or areas where maybe you have a cut over a crease and it's a difficult area to bandage, if it's a smaller cut, this can be a good option because it's a waterproofing layer and it will help to prevent bacteria from getting into that cut. The other things that I have added to this kit are these little rubber finger protectors. Those have been added actually because of an injury that we experienced this past winter, and I will throw up a picture of that. We had an injury occur to Sarah when she used an axe on her thumb, and she got really lucky, but we did not have any of these little finger protectors, and she was fortunate. We didn't need stitches or anything, but this would have been helpful in terms of keeping infection and dirt and things out of that cut because it was a hard place to keep clean. So now I keep those in the kit. A couple of the other items that I've added to my kit are these medications here. I always like to carry Benadryl, and you'll be really happy that you have some Benadryl. That's an antihistamine. If you happen to come across any kind of poison ivy or poison oak, it's not going to prevent or cure it, but it will significantly help to minimize the symptoms. Aspirin is also another thing that I carry. I'm sure you've probably heard the commercials out there where if someone's having a heart attack or a stroke, aspirin can alleviate that until they have a chance to get the first responders out there. So I always like to carry some aspirin just in case I ever come across anyone that's having any kind of a medical emergency. And then ibuprofen is going to be your first line of defense when it comes to muscle strains and sprains, because this is an anti-inflammatory. So I like to carry those medications there. A couple of the other things that I like to have are tweezers, and the tweezers can be really helpful in terms of removing ticks. And also when you're camping and working with wood, you're prone to getting splinters, so they can help out with that. Always having a good pair of scissors, so that way if you do need to work with any of this gauze, you've got something that is a sterile surface that you can cut this gauze with. And of course, gloves. Gloves are very important because we have to remember our universal precautions. You never want to come into contact with another person's body fluid. So that is a basic setup for my kit, and I've actually had to use this kit, and I've been very, very thankful that I had it. Now, if you look online for first aid kits, there are a lot of different options, and they do make several that are specific to outdoors. And you'll notice they carry a pretty heavy price point on them, and that's for the main reason that they're waterproof. One of the ways that I got around that was I took all of my bandages, my gauze, and anything else that would be damaged if it got wet, and I just put it inside of this plastic bag and then slipped it inside of the first aid kit itself. So that is a good affordable option to avoid paying those high prices for the waterproof med kits that don't carry any more supplies really than what you see here. For you backpackers out there that are concerned about weight, just to let you know, the weight of my first aid kit is slightly over 9.1 ounces. And although you may think that this is quite a bit of weight to carry with you, it's not going to be the first time that you need to use it. So I definitely cannot stress enough how important having a first aid kit. At least one person in your group should have a first aid kit whenever you're hitting the trail. Now, one of the honorable mentions that I don't actually keep inside my first aid kit, but something that I like to have really close, is Benadryl anti-itch gel. This stuff is awesome, whether you're dealing with mosquito bites, fly bites, chigger bites. If you need relief from bug bites, this stuff is great. And this is a 3.5 ounce bottle. I usually use this size when I go car camping, but they do make smaller sizes, and you can keep those right in the hip belt of your pack. So if you get bitten by something on the trail, you just throw a little bit of that on it and you get instant relief. So that's something to consider for your next outdoor adventure. Now, I'm going to include some links in the description below about information for where you can go to get yourself first aid certified. It's very important that you be first aid and CPR certified, not only on the trail, but in real life, because you never know when you're going to have an emergency situation. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell so you can be notified of my latest content, and stay safe out there, folks.